Welcome to the Heroes Blueprint podcast, where transformation begins and the next generation learns to unlock their superpowers. I'm your host, De-Paola, and today we're kicking things off with an absolute masterclass. I'm joined by the incredible Winn Claybaugh, entrepreneur, mentor, and someone who truly leads with kindness. In this episode, we dive deep into the power of authenticity, how to overcome adversity, and the importance of surrounding yourself with the right people. Winn also shares profound insights on staying present in relationships, navigating life setbacks, and leading with influence, not just titles. If you've ever felt stuck, lost, or unsure of your next step, this episode is for you. Let's dive in. Welcome to the Heroes Blueprint podcast. I'm super honored to have Winn Claybaugh here today. A mentor of mine, somebody who I've gotten to know over the past year. He's an incredible person, an accomplished business leader, speaker. He's an author, podcast host, and the founder and dean of Paul Mitchell Advanced Education. But most importantly, he's an amazing husband and father. He is a leader in culture, leadership, giving back. Winn has helped raise an astonishing $25 million, over $25 million for charitable causes and earned numerous awards, such as the prestigious Ellis Island Medal of Honor, and so much more. Winn, it's truly a pleasure to have you on as the first teacher, and I know listeners are going to pull a bunch of good, valuable information from this. How are you doing today?
I'm excellent, and first of all, I'm honored that you would think that I could be your first guest here, and by the way, I immediately said yes. I would never say no, because when I started my podcast 30 years ago was my first podcast. Were you even born yet?
No, I'm 20.
Exactly.
25.
So you weren't even born when I did my first interview, and it was with Vidal Sassoon, a very, very famous man. And he could have looked at me at that time and said, this kid doesn't know what he's doing. I'll wait till he has a couple of years of experience under his belt. I'll wait till he has some more success in life before I say yes to something like this. But he didn't do that. He immediately said yes. And so, and that alone was a great lesson for me, that I will always, always say yes.
Yeah. No, and I appreciate that greatly. And I so strongly believe in the mission behind why I created this podcast, that there's at least one person that's going to listen to this, that their whole mindset or their life is going to be able to take a different direction, an upward trajectory. And I just greatly appreciate you saying yes and coming on here, because you have so much experience, so much wisdom to share based off of the conversations me and you have had personally too. You're just an incredibly kind person. And I think there's so many good nuggets that people can take from this. But I want to ask you a question real quick, because I've heard you say that you grew up with phenomenal parents and they kind of taught you a lot about what you know now. So can you kind of walk me through about, like, where'd you start off that got you to this point that you're at right now?
Okay. Yes, I did have incredible parents, and I could spend hours talking about the things that they taught me, especially about working hard and work ethic and taking care of other people. I'm one of 8 kids, and so it was a very, very full, busy house. And so you had to be mindful of other people. I have an only child. She only has to worry about herself. So it's a very, very different experience. But first of all, I barely graduated from high school. Barely. Apparently they want you to show up. I told them I was too busy to show up to high school. I never went to college, so not one day of college. But, here I am, started my career 40 years ago, started my business 40 years ago. Not a hairdresser, so again, I'm in the beauty industry, I'm in the hair business, so there you go. The founder and co-owner of Paul Mitchell Schools. We have over 100 locations around the country, over 12,000 students a year that attend our schools. I get asked often to speak at major universities such as Yale and UCLA and Brigham Young University, having never gone to college, but I get these opportunities. And I have a reason, or I have my belief system as to why somebody like a Yale University would invite me to come and speak. It's not so much because of what's on my resume, because I think anybody can make a resume look good. And people rely on that resume. For me, because I've had people show up with that resume, and incredible things of education and work experience are on that resume. But, sitting in front of me, they're not nice, right? They're not passionate. And those are the things that I feel we need to really, really consider. And I've always showed up with those things. Not always. I have always intended to show up with a lot of passion, a lot of energy, with the mindset of being nice. And I know that has taken me so, so far.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely incredible. Did you always kind of feel like you would end up in a leadership position when you were growing up? Or was that
Not so
something that
much
just kind of felt you fell into?
not so much that I would end up in a leadership position, but I did always have the sense that I would work for myself. I always knew that I was meant to figure it out on my own and that I would drive that myself. I had no idea what that meant at the time. I just knew maybe I just felt like I would get fired. I don't know. So I had to come up with, plan B.
Yeah. No, that it's funny that you say that because for me, actually in high school too, I actually graduated the bottom of my class, and I was actually almost going to have to retake my senior year of high school. I was a really really bad student. I grew up with an only child with a single mother, so our household was very empty and kind of I was just not really caring about school. But I did have the mission that right after high school, what I was going to do is I was going to actually jump into the military, and then my life would kind of be fixed. That was my complete plan. So everything else I don't really care about. But the thing is once I graduated from high school, because I had asthma as a kid, I was disqualified. So right then and there, I was like, oh my God, I can't even join the
Wow.
military now. What the heck do I do? But I always had this deep sense that there was something that I was meant to do. And I didn't know what the heck that looked like. I just knew that there was, like you said, working for yourself. I always had that sense that there was going to be something that I was going to either create, where I was going to have like this big business or this big facility of where there'd be opportunity for change for people's lives. And I'd be working for myself, just being able to be a conduit to allow that change to come through. When you kind of were, so I'm just curious, were there any moments kind of like when you were kind of growing up or just kind of getting into figuring out what exactly your kind of purpose was there any moments where you felt like you didn't belong or like didn't fit in?
Oh, all the time, which is why I never went to high school. Which is why I didn't want to show up to high school. I just didn't feel like I belonged there. I was bullied. I mean, I could give you a million reasons as to why I didn't feel like I belonged. Why I felt like I was that outcast. And in talking with a lot of business owners and entrepreneurs, they tell very very similar stories. It's a different mindset. It's a different lifestyle. It's a different passion for those of us who want to become entrepreneurs. And by the way, we're probably going to use that word a lot, that entrepreneurial mindset. And a lot of people, they'll say to me, I'm an entrepreneur, and I ask them, well, what does that mean? What when you say that, what do you mean by that? Well, you know what? I want to work for myself. I want to come and go as I please. I want to make my own rules. And I'm like, you didn't describe an entrepreneur. What you just described was a really bad employee.
Yeah.
I mean, being an entrepreneur, that means that you work extra hard, you work more than everybody else, and you're taking all kinds of risks, right? My parents mortgaged their home to put me into business. My gosh, they were compromising or willing to compromise and risk and sacrifice their entire retirement to put their son into business. And so I had a lot riding on all of this. And yeah, again, I opened up salons before I opened up a Palm Mitchell school. And I remember I couldn't afford a washer and a dryer in my salon. And it was a tiny, small 3-chair salon. It was like the size of my closet. It was this tiny, tiny space. But all of a sudden, we were very, very successful. And I couldn't afford, nor was there a space for a washer and a dryer in my salon. And, my gosh, salons use towels all day long. And so what I had to do was I had to take bundles and bundles of towels home every single night. And I would set my alarm like every hour. I had to reset the alarm to jump out of bed and, put the wet towels in the dryer and new batch of towels in the washer, set my alarm later, an hour later, wake up again, pull dry towels out of the washer or out of the dryer, put, the wet towels in. And I would just do this over and over again for years because that's what you do.
Yeah.
There's no way I would have asked an employee to do that. But as an entrepreneur, showing up, working really, really hard. I love the word hustle. I love the word discipline, and maybe we'll talk about those meanings and what that means for me in my world. But that's what an entrepreneur is all about.
Yeah. One thing that really just came to mind when you were talking about your salon and bringing all that stuff home to wash all the towels and whatnot is immediately my first reaction a couple of years ago would have been like, that's not my definition of success then. I don't want that kind of success. I'm an entrepreneur, but that's not my definition of entrepreneurship. And I think that there's a really big misconception in a lot of people's heads where they don't exactly understand what it necessarily means to be an entrepreneur or have success, because it's not just you make it to a certain point and you're done working and you get to kind of just live the life you want. It's that you have to literally grind for a reason that's greater beyond just that. If all you're working for is just so you don't have to work, well, there's going to be situations where it gets tough. Like, that's a tough situation that a lot of people will be like, you know what, I don't think this is worth it. I don't think the extra hour staying up is worth it. I think I'm just going to fall back into a 9-to-5 job. And then that's how people get stuck in that hamster wheel. And that's when they stop dreaming. I'm curious, what was some of the things that kind of got you through that? What was your mission? Did you have a mission that was like, I know I need to accomplish something, and that's what's getting me through this?
Okay. The fact that I had no education, the fact that I had no experience, and again, I'm opening up a hair salon and I wasn't even a hairdresser. I've never been a hairdresser. And so, but all of that combined gave me the mindset that I better rely on other people. So I never walked into this thinking that I'm the smartest person, that I'm the most talented person. It's all up to me. I got this. I can handle it. I never, ever had that mindset. And the fact that I felt less than, and I don't mean that in a bad way in this context, the fact that I felt less than, that I didn't have the experience, that I didn't have the wisdom, I didn't have the education, that actually served me really, really well, because it put me in the mindset, it forced me to rely on other people. And to this day, I love walking into a room thinking that there's a whole bunch of people in this room who are much smarter than I am. I love that mindset. I am surrounded. What I'm really good at is attracting good people. That's what I'm really, really good at. I'm not the HR guy. You don't want me hanging out in the accounting department of my company, because things will turn into a disaster. But I have the best people in those fields. And what I'm really good at is attracting and keeping those people super, super happy. And so the fact that I had no experience turned into a very, very good thing, because I sought out great mentors. And I think that I was that way kind of my whole life. You asked the question earlier about what I gained from my parents, or maybe the mindset that I had back then. My mom would tell me that how she got me to eat breakfast was to tell me that that's what Walt Disney ate for breakfast. So even as a little kid, I was seeking out mentors. I was seeking out people who had success. And let's be very, very clear about what that means, because there are some people who choose to bring on mentors that they really should not be listening to. And that's a whole nother topic. But I always had that mindset that I want to find people who are successful and they do really, really good things with their success. And so whether that was as a child, Walt Disney, later in life, if that was somebody like a Marianne Williamson or a Louise Hay or a John Bradshaw, or, I've had these mentors all along the way. And it's because of those mentors. And I was humble enough to be a really, really good student, because I don't think that you can be a really good leader. Just like you can't be a really good teacher if you're not a good student. You can't be a really good leader if you're not a good follower. And so I always had that great mindset: find people who are smarter than I am, more talented than I am, and humble myself to become a student.
Yeah. You said that you attract nice people, and I want to touch on that because I think I know the reason why. It's because you are so incredibly authentic with who you are, and vulnerable with your story, and you own your story, which is something a lot of people, I struggle with that growing up. Is I couldn't believe my life was the way it was when I was comparing my life to other people's. And there was so many moments where I wanted to hide my story. I wanted to hide the fact that I was, I was growing up different than a lot of these kids, that I was doing so bad in school, that I was struggling with anxiety, depression, and stuff. It took me a very long time to realize that, if I didn't open up with my story and be vulnerable, I was never going to be authentic. And that was literally the thing that was disconnecting me from being able to attract mentors, to attract the right people in my life. And I know there's somebody, at least one person listening to this right now, who every day that they wake up, they're not showing up their authentic self. They're either trying to put a mask on and portray themselves a different way in the world. How would you recommend someone to start owning their stories so that way they can allow their authentic self to come out and attract the right people?
Depends on the story. And I do feel like there is some value, some safety, so to speak, in not being completely open and honest.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. I am 22 years clean off of drugs, and I'm very open
Congrats.
and honest about that. Do I share all of the ugly details of what that addiction looked like and the things that happened to me? No, I don't. I don't. To small circles, to close friends, I might. One on one with somebody who is struggling with addiction, will I share those stories, that intimacy of how bad it got? Yeah, I will. On an open platform, no, I won't. And that's my choice.
Yeah.
Now, I do know some people who are recovering and they share every little ugly detail, and their whole stage and platform is about addiction and recovery, and so that's part of their story. So I do understand that there are parts of your story that maybe you're not ready to share yet, because I think that maybe you do want to own a little bit of success, and so you say that you maybe have struggled with anxiety and depression. And once you have some success under your belt, it doesn't have to be complete success. It's just you're making progress. It's in that progress that maybe you want to share a little bit of that success, and you do want to share bits and pieces of your story. Um, so don't think that everything has to be an open book. And I didn't grow up during social media. I can't imagine what it would be like to date, with an app through social media. Thankfully, I didn't have to do that. I can't imagine what it would be like to try to launch a career and establish a brand and a business and a reputation, all with social media eyes on you at all time. That's something crazy to navigate. So, make sure that you're surrounded by the right people, and that you are protected. My circle, my inner circle is very, very, very small. Some people might think that I have a very large circle. When it comes to my circle of influence, I want it to be a large circle. I want to have more followers. I want to have more people listening to my podcasts. Why? Because I'm a nice guy. Again, I'm clean and sober. I don't cheat on my spouse. I pay my taxes. I'm integral. I'm honest. And so, yeah, I want to spread that word, because there's a lot of people with huge platforms and they have loud voices, and we really shouldn't be listening to what they have to say. And so those of us who are honest and nice and integral and decent, we should have a louder voice. But when it comes to my personal circle, it's very, very small. So I got to protect myself. I got to protect my little family.
Yeah. No, I think that protecting your family is absolutely key. I found that out. And like you brought up a good point. It's very difficult to navigate in today's age with social media because everyone is looking at more as better. You need to have more. You need to have more money. You need to have more friends, more bigger house. You need to have all these things on your plate in order to be considered successful. But the biggest thing is that when you're doing that, you're dispersing your own energy. And, diluted focus brings diluted results. If you're putting your attention and your energy into everything in the world and that stuff doesn't have any actual positive impact on your own life, if you're just giving your energy away and there's nothing charging you up, you're going to end up feeling drained and pretty much just dead all day. Mm-hmm. So I think that's something really important for people to kind of take what you just said is that, yeah, you are very successful. People can look at you and say, oh, this guy's got thousands of friends. He's got all these different things and stuff like that. But you just said your inner circle is extremely small and you protect that energy. And that's a really good place for people to start is maybe look at not adding more people to your plate, but look at who's in your circle right now and ask, are they the people that if you're entering a boxing ring with that you want in your corner? Are they going to be the people that are going to be able to hype you up in between rounds, recharge you? Are they going to be in battle with you? Because if not, then you're essentially going in a battle by yourself. But you say you have a bunch of friends that you're spending time with. Maybe, so just being in alignment with the right people and protecting that energy, I think that's something that I found personally myself to be so incredibly powerful and a foundation piece before you build on anything else.
Joe, I'm very energy sensitive, and what I mean by that is whomever I am hanging around, I will start to take on their energy, their moods, even their ideas, and I know that about myself, so I know who I can spend time with, and I also know, and this one is really important, I know who I need to stay away from.
Yeah.
Because as I've heard mentors say before, if you're hanging around five idiots, you'll be the sixth. If you're hanging
Hmm.
around five hopeless, negative, gossipy people, you're going to be the sixth. But the good news is the opposite of that is true. If you're hanging around five people who are really go-getters and they are integral and they want to give back and they want to make a difference in the lives of other people, then you're going to be the sixth as well.
Yeah. No, that's beautifully said. I have a question to follow up on that then too, because I think a lot of people, when they get to that question and they actually get deep with it and they realize, okay, maybe I'm surrounded by the wrong people. A lot of people get stuck right there because they're like, well, now I don't know exactly what to do next, because if I cut off these friends and I don't have anyone to kind of replace them, or I don't exactly know what to do. Do you have any advice or kind of tips for people out there that are trying to do that and how they can attract the right tribe?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, do you have one person? Do you have one? Because you don't need a lot. Do you have one person that no matter what has your back? Even when all of your ideas fall flat and nothing works, they're still in your corner. They're still your cheerleader. Just that one person. And I kind of look at it the same way as I'll tell this story. So years ago, I had this woman who worked for me, and she was the type of person that was winged on a pickle. You know, sour, bitter, moody, right? The type of person that brightened up a room by leaving. And
Yeah.
I thought, gosh, I'm a motivational guy. I can change her. I can turn this around. 5 years later, she was still the same way. And so what did I finally do? I fired her. Let me tell you something. The day that I fired her, all of a sudden, incredible, talented, loyal, beautiful people came knocking on my door looking for a job. And I was almost like, where were you 5 years ago? But see, because I had held space for a very negative person, I think that the universe has eyes. I wasn't opened. I didn't create a space for something better to step in. The second that I created that space, i.e., I said goodbye to this person. Oh, and by the way, was I really doing that woman any favor by allowing her to stay in my company? No. I wasn't doing her a favor. And not only that, but all my other employees were sitting on the sidelines thinking, how much longer is he going to put up with that? And how many good people did I lose because I kept this one person there? 50% of people who quit their jobs did so to get away from a toxic boss and from toxic team members. And by the way, those who quit are not the worst employees, they are the best employees. The best employees, they move on. Why? Because they know they deserve better. But I hadn't created that in my company. So the minute that I took responsibility for that, wasn't my job to fix or change her, right? That wasn't my job. The minute that unconditional love does not mean unconditional employment. I can love you, but you're fired.
Yeah. That's beautifully said. Unconditional love does not mean unconditional employment. You can still love people, but sometimes you have to remove them from your life.
And when you do, it's not a judgment. So when I say, hey, you need to look at your circle, and maybe there's people in your circle that you need to put some distance there, or you need to completely cut them off altogether, that's not a judgment on them. It's not an attack on those people. It's just that you love yourself enough to stay away. So the day that I decided to get clean off of drugs, could I still hang out with the people that I had that drug lifestyle with? No. Could I still just call them on occasion and say, hey, what's up? Could I still do that? No. What did I have to do? Completely cut them off. Now, did I cut them off because I now feel like I'm better than they are? I'm now judging them? No. I cut them off. I divorced myself from those people. Why? Because I now love myself enough to stay away.
Yeah. No, that's beautifully said. Sometimes you have to completely remove a door so that way that reality or that different dimension just doesn't even have the opportunity to come back into your life. And
Very
like you
well
said,
put.
it's not a judgment thing at all. It's just that sometimes your story, yourself, and you have to look at yourself and really love yourself enough to say, I can't allow this stuff in my world anymore, my reality. And when you close a door, other doors open up. So I know that as soon as you close that door, that allowed other doors to come and open up and different people to come into your reality. But you said something a minute ago that you say a lot, which is people don't quit companies, they quit bosses. I want to reframe this question and ask it to you from an employee's perspective, where they're like, I have this really good job, but I hate the culture. I hate the environment. And they are really struggling with, okay, should I leave? Should I stay? Is there something better out there for me? What would you recommend to someone who's in a good spot that they just don't know if they're ready to quit?
Okay, I think you know our good friend Tim Story.
Yes.
Love Tim, and he's a good buddy of mine, and he lives 10 minutes from here, and we get together often, and we've shared the stage 100 times. He's a great guy. And I love it when he talks about how we all go through hell, so to speak, right? We're in a job that we don't like, but at the end of the day, can't quit. We got to pay the bills, right? We have responsibility. So we're sort of going through hell. What he says is keep going, meaning it's just temporary. And so maybe you're in a job that you hate, but you still got to pay the bills. Okay, keep going. And on the side, you're getting a degree, and you're studying at night, and you're listening to podcasts of great mentors, and you're seeking out a circle of friends that are also aspiring to a better life, right? So you're doing all of those things while at the same time you're in a job that you hate. You're in a culture where people don't love and respect each other. You're working for a boss that doesn't appreciate you, that doesn't see value in you, but you got to pay the bills. So do you just quit that? No. I get concerned, when they talked about after the pandemic, this mass exodus. People were just quitting their jobs and didn't have a backup plan. And I understand that to a degree, that they were like, you know what, I'm not going to return to the life that I had before. For me, the pandemic was like God sent the entire planet to their room. Everybody go to your room, take a time out. And that's what we did. And when people came back, they're like, you're right, I hated that job, so I'm going to quit. Okay, what's the backup? And so maybe you're always looking for a backup. It's kind of the same advice that I give to a business owner when I tell them, even if you're fully staffed, you're always interviewing. Just because you have a team of people and every position is covered doesn't mean that you stop interviewing potential candidates. You're always interviewing. And so maybe you're in a job that is not ideal. You're always looking for something better. You're always improving yourself. You're always looking for other opportunities, but maintain what you've got, because that's the role that we all play. We got to pay the bills.
Yeah. No, one thing I see for a lot of people my age and a little bit younger than me is they'll let their situation dictate their entire life. And what I mean by that is if they're in a bad job and in a bad environment, I notice that when they get home, they'll carry that energy over into every aspect of their life. And one thing that when the pandemic happened for me that I realized is I started reading, I started listening to podcasts, I started doing a lot of these things. Now, I didn't necessarily like what I was doing day to day, but I also knew that if I was just going home and just sitting, playing video games, watching TV, if I wasn't asking questions, getting better, there was no way in hell I was ever going to be able to leave the situation, because I wasn't preparing myself in other areas of my life. I think that that's one thing that a lot of people struggle with, is being able to detach their energy and then find a way to find gainers, is what I like to call them, or chargers, like ways that they can charge up their energy. So for me, it was really going to the gym, listening to good books, asking questions, getting really deep with myself, because before I went back to my job when the pandemic happened, I was like, I need to know, what is my why for this? Like, genuinely, what is my why? Because I don't like what I'm doing, but what is going to carry me through this? Right. And a lot of people get scared of those questions because they don't necessarily know or like the answers that come up. But when you ask questions, and I know you're someone really good at that, asking questions, it gives you room to get answers, and then you get to ask more questions. So for me, it was like, I'm so anxious all the time. I'm severely introverted. I like this job because I can't do something else that would require me. It's a safe spot for me. And then when I got deep with that and I asked myself, well, why do I like to feel safe? A lot of people don't get deep in these questions. And I just highly encourage anyone listening right now, when you're in a position that you hate or you don't like and you go home, ask these questions. What don't you like about this job? Write that down. Get clear on what you don't like, because like we talked about earlier, you have to know what you don't like in order to avoid it. So although you're going back into your job day to day in a place you don't like, you're now getting clear on the things that you don't like, and then you could start to get clear on what you do like. And that gives you a plan so you can actually start to work on that. So then when you go home, you could start listening to podcasts like, okay, I need to be a better speaker. I need to be a better listener. You can start to arm yourself and create an arsenal so that one day, eventually, like as you're going through the hell, there will be a moment where you're like, I'm stronger than this and more equipped now than ever to pursue whatever it is I want to do. So I just highly encourage everyone to do that. Is there anything you would add on to that? To anyone?
Oh, by the way, while you were talking, I was taking notes. So look, like I'm taking some notes, and you're exactly right. So maybe you can't control the job that you have. You can't control how your boss treats you, and you need that paycheck. But what can you control? First of all, what can you control at work? So the boss is a jerk. Does that mean that you have to be a jerk to all your fellow employees as well? Maybe you could be the only bright light in that entire business, in that entire office building. The boss is an idiot, but you could be the person that brings a bit of joy to the rest of the team, which, by the way, is great practice for when you are the boss, if that's what you intend to do. And so, and you're learning. You know, I've learned just as much from bad leadership as I have from wonderful mentors. So you have a bad boss, you're like, you know what? When I have that power, when I have that responsibility, there's no way I'm going to repeat that. And boy, do we see it repeated all the time. So people are repeating the same behavior that forced them to quit their jobs before. I hate that boss, I'm going to quit. And then they turn around and they repeat the same behavior with the employees that they have. The other thing that you brought up that I really liked was you do have control over some things. So maybe you don't have control over how the boss treats you or the culture within the place that you work. But as you said, you do have control over getting home and listening to podcasts, going to the gym, getting 8 hours of sleep every night. Your boss isn't forcing you to stay up late at night. They're not forcing you to eat bad diets, right? They're not forcing you to do any of those things, but you have control over those things. And at the end of the day, if you're in a job that you don't really enjoy, like if you're a barista at Starbucks and you hate it there, you know what? Be the best damn barista that they have ever seen. It's just temporary. You're going through hell. Keep going. You're going to get through this. Something better is on its way. But while you're there, be the best damn barista that Starbucks has ever seen.
Yeah, that's beautifully said. That's beautifully put, because when you break down like a barista at Starbucks, man, they are around people 24/7. You have to be a good listener. You have to be a good talker. You have to make quick decisions and stuff like that. And I think a lot of people don't think about it in that aspect, is that if you're practicing being the best at something, you're practicing the skills that it takes to accomplish that.
It's going to serve you well.
Yeah, skills are always transferable. So utilize the fact that if you're in a position that you don't like, you're still going to be able to walk away with some knowledge. Like you said, you learn just as much from the people that you don't like from the mentors. And I got a follow-up question for this, because talking about leadership, a lot of people, when they hear the term leadership, like for example, me growing up, I was like, there's no way in hell I could ever be a leader. Like, I am introverted. I don't like to be around people. I don't like to immerse myself in people. I don't fit in. And as I've grown up and gotten older, I keep continuously finding myself in leadership positions unintentionally. And one of the reasons why is because I realized that leadership doesn't mean that you're just this person in charge of all these people. It means that you are in charge of yourself and you're clear on what you want, because if you're not clear on what you want, you can't lead others and help them get clear on what they want. And you can't showcase a mission or a message to other people if you're not clear on your own mission or message. What would you recommend to someone who, even if they're not serving in a leadership position, but they want to try and just kind of become a leader in their own life? How would you recommend they start to take those first steps?
Well, first of all, we have to define what leadership means. Everybody thinks that leadership means that you're the boss, that you have the power, that you have control, and that's not leadership. Leadership is not a position. Leadership is an energy. It's a mindset. So you could be brand new working for that company, being paid less than anybody else, and yet you can display qualities of leadership. Sometimes better qualities and better leadership than the person who really has the title, who really has the big office, who really is receiving the big money, and they've been in that position for 20 years. And yet you brand new are displaying leadership qualities. And so just understand what that means. For me, leadership is about having influence. And by that definition, everybody is a leader. We have influence over total strangers standing in line at the grocery store. with that stranger in line, you could either make their day or you could ruin their day, which means you have influence. You can imagine the influence that you have with the people that you're in the same building with every single day. If you can do that with strangers, what could you do with people that you're spending time with every single day? And so some of the things that you brought up, leadership does not mean that you have to be an extrovert. Leadership does not mean that you have to have the title and all the power. So, being an introvert where you're quiet and you're humble. I'm not saying that that's the definition of an introvert, but you're a good person. You're honest. You're integral. I think that my team members, the people who work for me in my company, they want to know that I'm a good dad. They do. They want to know that. They want to know that I'm a good husband. They want to know that I'm a decent neighbor. They want to know that I have these other qualities that some people might think have nothing to do with being the boss at work. But I think that they have everything to do with it.
Yeah. No, you bring up so many good points there. And it ties into your book, Be Nice, as well. I think leadership, one thing I've noticed for my Toastmasters club is I've become the president there. And I'm the youngest one there by about 25, 30 years. I'm surrounded by so many phenomenal, amazing people, and I'm the president of them all.
Of course you are.
But the reason why is because I ask them, and I'm curious, and I'm really genuinely interested in everybody there. And like you said, there's certain things that people, when they think of leadership, they're like, people don't need to know this about me. People want to know you're a good dad because it's a reflection of your values. And your values are so clear when you're in front and in charge of a bunch of people. If you have bad values, if you're not clear in your own values, I mean, you're not going to be able to do anything up there. People are going to be able to read your energy directly. So I got really clear on my values a couple of years ago. Like, I need to make sure that everything I'm doing, like who I'm talking to, all this stuff is in alignment with what I believe is right. Otherwise, I'm going to be at the will of everything external happening to me. If somebody walks in the room and they're not a good person, I would let them dominate. And like, that's how it would be for me before, because I'm an introvert. I don't speak up and stuff like that. But now it's like, if I see somebody's going to poison the room, or if something's not going right, I have to take action, because I don't believe in that. And I believe that in everyone's best interest in that room, somebody has to step up and they have to speak for those values. So as somebody listening to this, I really recommend get very clear on what you value. You value trust, you value love, whatever the heck it is, relationships, write those things down. And then ask yourself, in every aspect of your life, are you living in according with your own values? And when I got a question, because you are a dad and you are a husband as well. What are some lessons that because I know, look, relationships are not easy. I was a horrible person growing up in relationships, whether it be personally, family, friendships. I just didn't understand how relationships worked. And I realized there was a lot of aspects of my life that when I got into romantic relationships, that there was patterns of like, man, I was just getting really distant. I wasn't being honest, authentic with people and stuff like that. Are there any things that you've learned about being a dad and being a husband that you're like, oh my gosh, if I had known these things sooner going into this, my whole life would be different?
Well, first of all, I'm 65 years old and I haven't graduated from any of these things yet. I haven't mastered any of these things yet. And my daughter is 12 years old, and so you can imagine she has all kinds of opinions on what a good dad looks like, and I have to pay attention to that. To answer your question, the biggest thing for me would be just to be present. Just be present. So for my daughter, that means stay off my phone. And that's not easy, because my office is in my home and I still run my company. I have a very, very large organization. I'm involved in every aspect. It doesn't mean that I am an expert in every division of running my company, but I am involved in every aspect of my company. And that's another conversation that we could have of why I do that. I'm a very busy person, but when my daughter was about 3 years old, she said to me, "Daddy, you love your phone more than you love me." Whew.
Yeah.
That's heartbreaking. Now, was it true that I loved my phone more than I loved her? No. Was it her perception? Yeah. And I needed to own that. You know, I could have said to her, well, sweetheart, this is a teachable moment and you need to learn that one day this house doesn't pay for itself and daddy has. She didn't care about any of that. She just wanted her dad to be present. Well, guess what? You have people in your life. They don't have to be 3-year-old kids, 12-year-old kids. They can be grown adults. And their perception might be, Joe, you love your phone more than you love me. And we need to own that. And so I struggle with that all the time.
Yeah.
Every single day, I have to constantly remind myself. You know, I've got a sign in my office that says gratitude, where that's the first thing that I do every single day before I check any emails, before I respond to any business text messages. Show love, show gratitude. So my first email, my first text is something of gratitude, because I know that will help me be a better dad. I have a no phone zone time frame. So I get up at 4 o'clock in the morning. My daughter gets up at 6. So from 6 to 7:30, that's my time with her. I'm not on my phone. And if I do have to be on my phone, I ask her, sweetheart, daddy really has to take care of this. Is that okay? I have a conversation. I don't just assume, well, I'm the dad, I'm the parent, I can do what I want. I make her part of the conversation. So if I were to boil it down to just one thing, not that you asked for one thing, because Lord knows I could ramble, that would be it. Just be more present. And in today's world of social media and cell phones, and that's a really, really tough one. I'm thrilled because it's happening in my daughter's school. I'm thrilled when you hear about these high schools that are saying no phones. And of course, immediately those high school kids are pissed off about it. But then you come back and ask them 3 or 4 months later, because this has happened, where a news crew came back in and asked these high school students, and now they're thrilled about it. They're thrilled. Like, I saw this documentary. They had cameras on a lunchroom of a high school where they do allow phones, and another high school lunchroom where no phones allowed. What was the difference? No phones. There was laughter. There was engagement. There were conversations. In the lunchroom where phones are allowed, 1,000 kids staring at a device.
Yeah. Relationships are so hard. And like you said, I don't think there's ever going to be a day where somebody's going to be able to say that they've mastered anything. Relationships are tough because they consistently take work. And, one thing that I pulled from what you said is really that, relationships aren't an entitlement, they're a privilege. And you have to put the work in for them. And you have to be present with the other person and realize that if you're putting yourself first all the times and you're not surrendering, you're constantly going to be pushing people away, and you can't expect those people to not notice that. If you're constantly on your phone and you're in a room of other people and you're just thinking, oh, these are my friends, like I'm entitled to go on my phone, they're going to be there no matter what, whatever, you're unintentionally, without even recognizing the fact that you're pushing them away. And there's going to be a period 6 months down the line, a year from down the line, that if you don't make changes to be present with those people, there's going to be so much distance between you. So I want to give you credit for that, because that's something that takes a lot of hard work. And like you said, you have gratitude. Like, I am surrounded in my house. I put stuff all over my walls, sticky notes, like stuff that reminds me, because I realize something is that I'm the one that holds myself back more than anything in the world. Like, I have all this stuff that I'm clear on, my values, all these things. It's never anyone else that gets me off track or off rut or like creates distance between these things that I want. It's always me. And if I'm not constantly putting the work in to make sure that I'm doing the things that I know are in alignment with what is in my heart, then I'm constantly going to be getting off track. So I think that's something really tangible and good for people to take away, is that like once you're clear, like you knew that your relationship with your daughter was so important to you, because that is heartbreaking to hear. Like, man, like I can't tell you the amount of times that I'm thinking about that in my own life, where I'm around people and I'm like, man, like they're not there for me. Like they're in their own head, they're in their own world, and I know that they say they care, but like their actions don't show. Your actions, everything you do is always going to speak louder than words. That's just you put that beautifully said.
I need to tell you, as you throughout this whole interview, Joe, I need to tell you, you're a very good speaker. You're a very good communicator, and I could tell It's from your heart, but it's also from a place of you've done the work, you've done the studying, you continue to do the work, and that's where it's coming from. And that alone, the what you're modeling for your audience right now is pretty profound.
I receive that, and I greatly appreciate that. I genuinely do, and I hope that I know that there's at least one person listening right now that is able to connect with something we've talked about, and that's going to be able to help change everything for them. I want to touch on something else too, real quick. When you recently went through an injury this year, something that you've never had to experience, and that is something like so I tore my ACL in high school, right? And I was a super active person, and my whole identity was tied to the fact that I was terrible at school, but I could run faster than anyone. I was stronger than anyone. And when my ACL torn, I mean, I lost everything. I lost who I was, and I know there's a lot of people that tie their identity into who they are, and then when something like a stick gets hit in the road and they lose that, and then they fall apart. How did you continue to keep going forward and not fall into a rut? Or if you did, how did you get through that?
Wow, I don't think I've ever had that question related to, because it was the 1st of July, so it wasn't all that long ago, several months ago. Yeah, I on vacation, I had this fall, and it put me in a boot and on crutches and in a lot of pain for several months. So, wow, I don't think I've had this conversation. You know what? Maybe that I'm not invincible, and it's easy to feel that way. It's easy to feel like I've got this covered, I've got this handled, and I think we all need a little bit of humility in our lives. It's like when things are going well, it's like a punch in the stomach. And I've had those wake up calls many, many times, whether it's, I've now, by this time, I've lost both my mom and my dad. I lost my mom exactly a year ago. That's a punch in the stomach. For some people, it's bankruptcy, or it's getting fired from a job. It's a breakup. It's an injury. So I think that, what do they say? That things happen for you, not to you. So I guess I could have looked at that like, wow, why me? I don't deserve this. I'm a good guy. I'm a good parent. I don't deserve to have this happening to me. And, I use that time as a time to reflect. And so I didn't mind getting lazy and switching to a different mode of how I was going to spend my day. I didn't throw a pity party. Maybe I would have years ago, but I didn't throw a pity party. And so maybe it was just an experience, something that happened for me to help me realize that, wow, I'm doing pretty good. I've made some progress. This didn't turn me upside down. It was just a little bump in the road, and it all happens for a reason.
Yeah. No, that's greatly put. And something you touched upon very briefly right there was time. A huge misconception that people have when they look at people like you or other successful people is like, oh man, these people, they have all the time in the world. I don't have any time to do the things I want. I don't have any time to do the things I like. But we all have the same 24 hours in a day. In this instance, you chose to see things, even though you went through a hard time, you chose to see things and spend your time viewing this thing as like, okay, maybe it's for me, not against me. But there's a lot of people who out there aren't doing that. And they're saying, oh, I don't have enough time for any of these things. Is there anything you could share about the way that you spend your time? Because you are extremely busy, but you also make room for what's important to you with your family and for the culture that you set at your work and for the people that you talk to. Do you have any tips on time management or just in time in general?
Yeah. We come up with those two words, hustle and discipline. To this day, I still hustle. I hustle because I assume that the phone is never going to ring. And a lot of people are just waiting for the phone to ring. The phone does not ring. We make things happen. And I can tell you exactly what that hustle looks like. Again, I'm still up at 4 a.m. every single day. I'm still at the gym 5 days a week. And if you go to the gym at 5:30 or 6 o'clock in the morning, the gym is packed. And it's not packed with a bunch of losers. It's packed with people who are hustling as well. That's a great way to start your day. You're surrounded by like-minded people who are on that same path, that same journey along with all of you. But I became a father later in life because I'll have people say, "Gosh, when I see you on Instagram with your beautiful daughter, oh my gosh, you're like the father of the year." I'm like, "No, I'm not. My gosh, the father of the year, the parent of the year is that they're in their 20s and their 30s with kids, and they're still going to school and working 3 jobs. How do you make that happen?" I mean, that's the parent that I want to celebrate, that I want to acknowledge. I'm at a point in life where I can hire help to help me manage my home and my daughter and all of that. But I can't even remember what your question was.
You brought up some great points right there, though. But it was about the time management, and you brought up hustling.
Okay, well,
Um,
as for time management, I'm very, very detailed. So, like, if you look at my planner, is it in? I left it in the house. Let me tell you something. My everything is written down. Like everything. I'm not exaggerating. I bet I make 400 phone calls a year to wish people happy birthday. And do I remember all those birthdays? No, it's written down. Everything is written down. If you and I are having a conversation and we say, "Hey, in 3 weeks from now, I'm going to get back to you on this topic," you better believe I went to my planner and I wrote it down. 3 weeks from now, talk to Joe about this. So in 3 weeks from now, I call you, "Hey, Joe," you're like, "How did you remember?" I didn't remember. I wrote it down. I wrote down the conversation. I wrote down what I needed to respond to you about. I write it all down. I'm very, very detailed with all of that. Um, and again, the discipline of having a set schedule. Because I used to say, "Well, I'll go to the gym whenever I'm in the mood, whenever I have the time," which meant I never went.
yeah.
I go to the gym at 7:30 every single morning. My mood has nothing to do with it. And I'll have people say, "Can we meet at 7:30? No, I can't meet you at 7:30. I'm in the gym at 7:30. I can meet you at 9:30. And some people get upset about that. Why can't he cancel the gym for me? And other people are like, "Wow, good for you. You respect your personal time, and you'll probably be better for me at 9:30 because you took the time for yourself to go to the gym first." So again, it's that hustling, and it's having the discipline to really, really prioritize what's important to you.
Yeah, and putting what I got from that too is also putting in the work, because it's super easy that, let's say me and you talk and then we say in 3 weeks we're going to talk again. It is extremely difficult to go to your plan and write that down, because 100 things could happen in between that. You could get a phone call. I mean, you could spill something. There's so many obstacles that could get in the way. And I think it speaks volumes, the fact that you make sure that when something like a birthday or a conversation you have, that is important enough to you that you're going to go write that down and not let anything get in between it. I think that's super key, because there's a lot of people out there, like, they'll allow things to interfere with what they say they want. And it's like, it's them they're just not putting in the effort into the thing that they actually believe is important for them. And getting distracted, especially in today's world, is so easy. And I think that's something really that people should look at pulling, because I do the same thing. I mean, when I'm still struggling with this, I will say I'm going to do 100 things in a day, right? I'm going to reach out to certain people. I'm going to text somebody. I'm going to give my friend a call or something like that. I will put 100 things on my agenda. If I don't write any of those things down, I'm only going to get one thing done, because life is crazy. And when you're clear on what you want day to day and you write that stuff down and you're like, "No, nothing is going to interfere with this stuff. Life will continue. Life is going to happen, but this stuff has to get done." That creates discipline, and that puts you in alignment with the stuff that's important to you.
And I'm very old school, so I like writing things down. Some people do it digitally. I love having that planner, and it is with me at all times. I write everything. So I don't know if you can see this, but so it says Monday. Guess when I wrote this? On Monday? No, this was written yesterday, right? And so
Yeah.
today I'm going to write down what my agenda is and what I want to accomplish for tomorrow, Tuesday. So it's in advance. So I wake up, I know exactly what I need to take care of that day. And I just like for some reason, I just like writing things down. That from my thoughts, pen to paper, just really, really works for me. So I have a gig, pretty important gig coming up in Las Vegas the end of May. Guess what? In my planner in May, on the day of that gig, I'm already writing down the topics that I want to. And as I'm brainstorming between now and May, I'll have all kinds of brainstorming ideas. I'll listen to something on a podcast. I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to steal that. I'm gonna share that in my seminar that I'm doing that in front of those 1,000 people at the end of May, and I'll write it down in my planner the end of May. So I'm whatever system you have, but you better have a system. And I know that some people will also give the advice to not have more than one system, because if you're in your planner, but then you're also digital, and then it lives in different formats, maybe that wouldn't work. But I love the idea of just writing everything down. Oh, and then that idea about that I call people on their birthdays. So during Thanksgiving week, I said, I'm gonna shut down, completely shut down. I didn't look at my planner. I didn't look at anything, which meant I missed 2 birthdays. And when I then called those people on Monday after Thanksgiving week, let me tell you, both of them were pissed at me. Like, they were like literally, like, the one, she's like, my husband always forgets my birthday. You never forget my birthday. Like, she was literally, and I had to talk her off the ledge a little bit. Like, okay, by the way, I also forgot my godson's birthday too. She's like, oh, okay, I feel a little better. Like, she was, didn't feel so low on the totem pole that I forgot about her. But anyway, it's important to write this stuff down and be consistent with it.
It truly is. And, to take this even a step deeper, I've never been a writer. And when in the pandemic, when I started getting, like, when I started writing everything, I mean, everything that was in my head, I started putting on paper. And what I realized is that after continuously writing pages and pages and pages on a journal, is that the thoughts that were in my head are the same thoughts I'm having every single day. And when I get them out on paper, I can finally say, okay, now they have a place in reality. They're not just in my head. It's making room for new thoughts to come into place. Mm-hmm. And as I kept writing, I kept getting deeper and deeper on like what I was actually in my head. And then that's when stuff started really opening up to me, where I'm like, okay, here's actually what I need to do. Here's what I need to release. I need to start going to the gym, because like subconsciously I'm thinking about every day my health, but I'm not doing the actions and stuff like that. So when you're writing down, even if you're not a writer, just write. And just get everything out on a paper so it's not living in your head. Because, I mean, for people battling anxiety, depression, I mean, when you're in a rut, when you're in a bad season, your thoughts are dominated by negativity. And they're going to live in your head. If you do not get that on paper and out into reality, they're just going to keep thriving and living. Put that on a paper and then get that all out. And then start to make room for new things to come into place, because then you can get clear on what you want.
Brilliant advice. And by the way, I do want to be transparent with your audience. I struggle with that myself. Happiness is not something that comes naturally to me. Yeah. I have to work for happiness every single day. Oh, and by the way, I'm one of the happiest people that I know, but I still, I have to work at it every single day.
I thank you for sharing that one, because I am the same exact way. And people look at me and they just do not believe that. The first thoughts that come to my head when I wake up are not good thoughts. They are not me wanting to get out of bed. They are not me wanting to go out and crush the day. They are every single reason why my life sucks. And it is the hardest part of my day to get out of bed. And a lot of people don't realize that, is that, although I might be happy talking to people and stuff like that, it takes work. But I know that my why and the reason for me getting out of bed is greater than the reason why I should stay in bed or let those negative thoughts, the depression, the anxiety dominate my life. I'm still anxious during going up and giving speeches or talks. I still have panic attacks when I'm going up to give a speech. But you know what? I do it anyways, because I know that something is going to come from this that is greater than the reason why my head is telling me not to do it. And that's something like you just shared something right there that's so profound, because people assume like, oh, you just wake up in a good mindset. That is not the case. But if something is important enough to you, if being a good person, spreading light and joy into the world is important enough to you, those dark moments when you first wake up will not dominate your life.
See, brilliant. You're brilliant.
I appreciate that.
You didn't need me today. You got this handled.
No, Win, this is it. The reason why I'm talking to people like you is because you are such an incredible person, but you also create a space for me and you are combining our thoughts right now. And a lot of people don't realize you cannot do life alone. And when you're talking to somebody, you're basically creating a third person where you're combining your thoughts, you're combining your advice, your guidance, your struggles, and all this stuff. And you're creating a third person that's not physically there that you can pull information from. And that's something that I learned. Like, I was spending so much time isolated by myself. I just didn't like to go out around people. And I realized I was doing myself the biggest disservice on earth, because talking to people allows new things to come into existence and new thoughts to come into play. But Win, I have a question here as we're wrapping up for you. So there is a time in my life where I considered myself a CD player, and everything I was listening to was in the form of a VHS, and it just would not compute with me. There's somebody out there that's listening to this interview that they are like, I love all this stuff, but it is just not computing with who I am. I do not know how to apply it. I do not know how to make these changes. Do you have any advice for people that are trying to figure out how to apply this stuff, but their identity just doesn't necessarily match up with this stuff? They just don't see themselves as capable of making these kind of changes?
Absolutely. And some of it we've already talked about. You got to look at your circle, the people that you're hanging around. Absolutely. You might need to make some changes there. So put some distance there. If you have some people who they thrive on that. There are people who thrive on gossip. They thrive on negativity. They thrive on a train wreck. They thrive on bad things happening to people. And they can't wait to tell you all about it. So you just need to put some distance with those people. It's not just what we listen to, because you and I are talking about the value of podcasts and playing the voices of our mentors over and over again in our heads. We need to have that constantly. But it's also what you don't listen to. It's what you don't watch. I don't watch violent films. I don't watch gossipy reality shows. There are people who know more about the Real Housewives than they know about the latest research in breast cancer. To me, that's heartbreaking. Like, where are the conversations that truly matter? And if you're taking up space, which I think that I've heard you say, if you're taking up space with what's going on with the Real Housewives, or what's going on with, this horrible person, this influencer who's just spreading more poison and toxin, and if you're taking up space with that, there's not space left over for the good news, for the good mentors. And so divorce yourself from that stuff. And that might mean that you're kind of in limbo a little bit. Well, stay in limbo and open yourself up to some of the good mentors. I remember in 1985, when I bought my first brand new car, I made a decision right then and there that I would never listen to music in that car. And by the way, I love music. Our favorite thing to do is to go to concerts. I'm a musician myself. I love music in the house. It's the first thing that I do at 4 o'clock in the morning is I turn music on. Before I even turn the coffee on or put the dogs out, I turn music on. So I love music, but I made a decision that my driving time, so my commute to and from work every single day, would be spent listening to the voices of my mentors. Oh, and back then, by the way, Joe, it was a cassette tape, because there was no such thing as CDs, or there was no such thing as podcasts, right? It was popping in the cassette tape. And I have cassette tapes that I memorized, that I wore them out, listening to them over and over. What's available to you now? So you and I have spent, I don't know, about an hour together so far. And I'm thinking that there are people, or I'm hoping that there are people right now listening to this who feel better about themselves now than they did an hour ago. Well, what if you did this every single day? What if you have an hour commute time to work, what if that entire hour was spent playing the voices of your mentors and your heroes over and over and over again? Because other voices are playing in your head, right, Joe? You and I know those other voices all too well. Those voices are playing in our heads too. And so divorce yourself from the garbage, divorce yourself from the people who maybe should not be taking up time in your world, and then fill it with something different.
Yeah. No, it's beautifully put, Win. Thank you for sharing that. You just, I was gonna ask you one more question, but now I have to ask you another question too. Um, if this was your last day on Earth, and you were to leave behind something for your daughter, for your family, for your loved ones, that they could turn to whenever life is just extremely hard for them or they're in a dark time, what would be those three big things that you write to them and why?
You know, you put it that way because I think a lot about September 11th and the lessons that we learned that day. That there were people on a plane or in the towers, and all of a sudden they knew they had a small chance, a small opportunity to make a phone call. Now, here's the deal they didn't call their boss to say, "How dare you not give me that raise?" They didn't call an enemy or a family member to fight it out one more time. They called a loved one, and they only had one message. What was the message? I love you. Nothing else mattered. And yet today, why do so many other things matter to us? Why are that to-do list, everything on that to-do list, why are those things far more important than calling your mom every day, than expressing love and gratitude to the people in your life? If I had to boil it down to three things, number one, again, surround yourself with the right people. And you can do that today. Today you can do that. Number two, give back. Make a difference. Because we're all consumers. We consume oxygen, we consume water, we consume trees. We even consume the paycheck of our customers who spend money with us. We have to be contributors. And by the way, that's just the law of the universe. What goes around comes around. Cause and effect, karma, call it whatever you want. And a lot of people are waiting until they're financially successful to then give back. You know, when I'm a multimillionaire, then I'll write out $100,000 checks to my favorite charity. Okay, so you can't write out the $100,000 check today. Can you write out a $5 check? Or maybe you can't donate any money, but can you show up and donate your time? So that would be number two. You've got to come up with a routine now, a practice today of what giving back looks like. Donating your time, your money, your resources to make a difference in the lives of other people. And then number three, just be nice. Just be nice. And I there you go. I heard this quote, and I actually put it in my book. A person who is nice to you but mean to a waitress is not a nice person. So some people, they know who to be nice to, but they don't think that that applies to everybody. And again, do I get it right? Because I'm sure there's somebody listening to this that said, yeah, when I saw you flip off somebody on the freeway, so you're a fraud. You know, we don't get it right all the time. So, you know, gosh, just don't be a jerk.
Don't be a jerk. That amazingly put. And you know, I want to pull something from that I kind of sense, which was there's a lot of people that are waiting for life to be figured out before they do the things that are important to them. They're waiting to make it, like you said, before they cut the check. They're waiting to make it at their job before they spend more time with their family. They're doing a lot of waiting. And I might be wrong in this one, but I have found after searching for many years of chasing that, oh, I have it all figured out, that is not a thing. And I think that there's a lot of people out there that believe that there's one moment in their life where they're going to be like, I have life figured out, and then everything is going to fall into place. What do you recommend to those people, if that's even true, to kind of like reframe their mindset on that? Because I can't tell you how much, I mean, I destroyed relationships because of that. I was like, if I just make it, if I can just have enough money, they understand. I mean, they're going to be there no matter what. A year or 2 years goes by, I'm grinding for this stuff. And all this time, the thing that was most important to me most, I was like letting fade.
We do it with our careers. We do it with money, with family. We even do it in romantic relationships. Yeah. When the perfect person walks into my life, then I'll be charming. But right now I'm dating this idiot, so I don't have to be nice to this person. You know, just life is just this beautiful, beautiful journey of learning and growth. And I don't ever want to feel like I'm done, because when I'm done, I'm done. I mean, I love being a dad at this age of my life. I love the fact that I've got 21 years of marriage, but I want to have 40 years of marriage. And what does that mean, and what does that look like? I haven't mastered anything yet. And there's something so attractive about that. Again, I'm in the hair business. I was at this convention, a hair convention, which is a lot of vendors and classrooms and education going on, like most conventions. And somebody grabbed me and said, "You got to come into this room and meet this woman." And they took me into this. It was a room where they're teaching hair cutting. So there's all these mannequin heads set up. There's 100 people. So they're all there in this classroom with their mannequin and their scissors, and they're going to learn a new haircut, or they're going to learn something, right? They took me to the front row. And who's on the front row? A hairdresser. She was 89 years old. 89 years old. Still signing up for education. Still paying money to learn and to grow. And she was the most charming, just adorable. Why? Because she has a passion for learning and growth and knowledge. By the way, I know some 18-year-olds who already know it all. And there's something very unattractive about a know-it-all. But when you have this belief system and this practice that life is this journey, and that you're never done, that you're always expanding and growing, and that every opportunity is just another opportunity for you to do all of that, and to go deeper in your relationships, to become a better human being, and that's your mindset and that's your practice, man, that's just so attractive, and that's a beautiful way to live your life.
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful way to wrap things up, Winn. I can't thank you enough for your time. I'm going to put all your information, of course, in the show notes, but is there any way that people can get involved in what you have going on or support you? How can listeners best kind of give back to all of the great advice that you've kind of dropped today?
To connect, because I love relationships. I love that connection. So whether you follow me on Instagram, or you go to my website or whatever, I get hundreds of DMs. And by the way, I personally respond. I don't have an assistant that responds to my emails or to my DMs. I want to have that engagement with people. And so please follow me, and please reach out to me, and let's begin the conversation.
I love that. And Winn, one follow-up question, because I know there's going to be a couple people here who want to become hairstylists, like Paul Mitchell. I know a lot of my friends have gone to the Paul Mitchell school out by me. I'm only 20 minutes away from one. How can people get involved in Paul Mitchell too, if that's their dream? And what kind of, I know some people are like, man, like my mom is one of those people that I'm pushing her, because she's like, I want to be a hairdresser. She's 53 years old, and that is still her dream to do that one day. But she's like, money gets in the way. All these things get in the way. What is something you could recommend to someone who that is their dream, but they just don't see a clear path? How can Paul Mitchell kind of help them with that?
Come check us out. Come spend time, because we've created a culture within our Paul Mitchell schools, and there's 100 around the country. So we're in many communities. Just come spend time. And that's what I like, is when people come and they experience the culture, when they're hanging out and they're just observing and they're shadowing. That's when they really get excited about signing up for our schools, because they experience the culture. They see the posters all over the walls of the organizations that we're raising money for. They see in action that people are having fun, that they're laughing, that they're engaging with each other. And there's just something about that, having that servant's heart. There's really something pretty incredible about people who choose to make a living by serving other people. And that's absolutely the career of a hairdresser, or a barber, or a skin therapist, or a nail technician. They have a servant's heart. They want to help people look better and feel better.
Yeah. No, beautifully put, Winn. Thank you so much.